We got to address the suburban women problem because it's real.
Suburban women helped determine the 2020 election, but there's more to us than the headlines would have you believe.
The suburbs aren't a homogenous sea of white people in perfect houses. Real change is happening in the suburbs, and we have things to say.
When women share their personal stories, walls come down and barriers are broken.
Welcome to the Suburban Women Problem, a podcast from Red, Wine, and Blue. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'm Amanda Weinstein.
I'm Jasmine Clark.
I'm Rachel Vinman.
And this is the Suburban Women Problem. Welcome back and thank you for joining us. So recently, we've seen some articles going around about Kamala Harris and how she's supposedly creating a stressful work environment and that she's difficult to work with because she wants her staffers to answer the phone and she likes to use a particular pen, like how dare she? And she's the Vice President of the United States. Obviously, that's going to be a stressful work environment. Who goes into that job thinking, I'll bet this is not going to be very stressful? If she was a man, people would either expect this from her or they would talk about her decisive leadership skills, and all of it would be a positive trait, not a negative one. We are also more likely to hear stories about what these same women are wearing and what they look like. We have to be sweet and patient and demure, but also be thin and wear makeup and a new perfectly tailored dress every day, and it's exhausting. So let's talk about the unrealistic standards that women are held to and how that can detract from the amazing things we have to say and the amazing work that we do. So later we'll be joined by Andrea Wilson, a mom from Boise, who has dealt with unrealistic standards and body positivity issues firsthand. And after that, I get to talk with Amy Pence-Brown. Amy is an artist, a writer, and an activist for radical self-love. So Rachel, what were your thoughts when you heard about the non-existent scandal at Vice President Harris's office? Is there a double standard here?
Well, let me just say that my husband has the same requirements, and we have a two-person office that consists of me and him. You know, he does want the phone to be answered. I think anyone who runs a business would want a phone to be answered.
It's pretty fair.
And yeah, it is. And as well, both of us are pretty particular on the pens we like. And I don't think any of this is really that out of the ordinary. A female vice president is a really easy target, but this is nonsense. And it's a trope of sorts. And I find it incredibly insulting. Jasmine, you're an elected official. Do you feel that you've been held to a different standard than your male colleagues?
Not only do I feel it, but it is pretty much in the front as well as the back of my mind in every decision that I make on how I run my office. From number one, how I staff my office, who I staff my office with, making sure that I don't do anything or ask for anything in a way that someone could come back later and use it against me. You know, I'm
tired even thinking about this. My gosh.
Yeah. It's true. It takes so much time.
Yeah. It's so frustrating because a lot of my time is spent just making sure that I don't end up in some type of negative article about me, doing something like being upset because, someone didn't show up on time. And while that might be normal, most bosses want their employees to show up on time. It's something about if a woman does it, and not just a woman, a Black woman, i.e. Kamala Harris, having high expectations or high standards, that translates to being difficult to work with. And if that wasn't enough, not only do I worry about those types of things, but I also just worry about my appearance. Everything about how I look, from does this dress fit right? Is it long enough? Is it, should I wear heels or flats? Flats are comfortable. Heels look, and I'm using air quotes, look better. All of these things go into my mind. And I actually had a conversation yesterday evening with some of my colleagues about this. And we were talking about how even when we go, like, for example, to the grocery store, there's this pressure to always look like a representative, no matter what. I do not feel comfortable leaving the gym or leaving from a workout and going straight to the store. I feel like I have to leave from that workout, go home, change, look like a representative, then go to the store. These are the decisions that I have to make. And, some people might say, well, that's just in your head. That's not really true. But I've actually had people say things to me like, well, you have to always be ready. You never know who you're going to run into. And so it's a real thing. And it's something that's pretty much always on my mind. So yeah, it's exhausting constantly thinking about how people think about how I act as well as how I looked on a daily basis being a public figure.
Wow. I don't think my husband, who's also a state representative, thinks about what he wears when he goes to the grocery store. Sorry, not to throw him under the bus, but he just goes in whatever he's wearing. If he just got from the gym, he doesn't seem to even think twice about, of course, I'm going to go run this errand that my wife just asked me to go on, I don't think he thinks about it. And the truth is, loving your body is a political act because nobody wants us to do it, right? They want us so wrapped up in anxiety about our appearance that we're afraid to speak our mind or make real change, or we just don't have the time because now we're spending so much time going between our job to go get showered and look ready just to go to the grocery store that we have to go to, right? They're just taking time away from us. And research shows that this self-objectification by women is associated with lower political efficacy, meaning that women are less likely to think their voice matters, less likely to think their vote matters, and less likely to think that they can bring about change in politics. So Rachel, when Alex's testimony against Trump threw you into the public eye, people found out pretty quickly that you weren't going to be shy about any of it, that you were going to speak your mind and push for change. Did you see people push back by talking about what you looked like?
Yes, I anticipated it though. And I have to say, I had dear close friends who said, do you really want to put yourself out there? They really cautioned me against it. A direct quote is, how women are judged. And this was a supporter who wanted to protect me, but it is definitely a way of marginalizing women. I knew this would be attack used against me because it was attack used against my husband. But he couldn't have cared less. I, on the other hand, am a bit more sensitive. And I think the reason why it's used as an attack is they know it's a sensitive spot for a lot of women. And it's a way to silence them. My interview with Connie Schultz a couple of months ago, she said, if they're attacking your appearance, it's because they don't have anything of substance to say. They've already lost. And amen, Connie. Amen. That is absolutely true.
That's the perfect way to think about that. That if they're talking about your appearance, you've won. You've just won the argument. Thank you for ceding that ground to me. Woo, little celebration emoji right there.
Yes, exactly.
When you're younger, like I said, those attacks, they would have worked on me when they're younger, but now it still gets to me, but it's not going to stop me. It bothers me, but I'm not going to let it silence me. But you guys are both younger than me. Jasmine, where are you on your journey of self-love?
Well, one of the things I want to say is as you all were talking about how women, a lot of times because appearance is such a big deal, they are less likely to engage in politics. That's me paraphrasing. And it made me think about the fact that when I was first making the decision to run for office, one of the things I was so concerned about was just being in the public eye. And part of the reason why is because I sat down with someone who basically said, attractive people are more likely to win races. And so, being attractive is a part of it. And, I don't know if that's true or not, but then it was like, stuck in my head, like, am I attractive enough? As far as my full journey for self-love, I'm still on it. I am still on that path. I still have these moments where I don't feel like I am good enough and I don't feel like I look good enough. And I still worry about those things. You would think someone who has all these things going for them wouldn't even care. But I do care, and I wish I didn't care. So I would say on my journey, I have come a long way. Bodies change. I get that. I teach anatomy and physiology. I know this to be true. bodies change over time. But I think saying it and teaching it is very different from living it and seeing it with my own eyes and seeing how my body has changed over time. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, we went through years of infertility treatments, and, that it's a lot of hormones that affect your metabolism and weight gain. And then, 2 pregnancies close together, and there was a lot going on there, like a lot of women. And I would be lying if I said it wasn't still an issue for me. And I think it's mostly, as we've said, it's about loving yourself and accepting yourself.
So honestly, that surprises me to hear you both say that, because Rachel, I first got to know you through Twitter, seeing your Twitter feed, and Jasmine, getting to know you. I would not have guessed that either of you struggled with body image issues at all. I would have thought they're these confident women, they brush it off, they don't care. I never would have guessed that. And when I think about my mom a lot, who's this tiny little woman, but she has struggled mightily. And as I go older, she let me know how she struggled with her body image issues. And when she was younger, she had an eating disorder. And she let me know that she was very intentional about wanting me to have good body image issues and always wanting me to feel, no matter what I look like, she wanted to make sure that she said that I looked beautiful walking out the door and that I always felt beautiful. And the interesting thing about, having my mom always say you look beautiful and making sure I was confident in that is that I didn't care as much how I looked, right? She told me I looked beautiful. And so for me, I have always cared more, or I've always focused more on what my body can do and not how it looks. So before the pandemic, my husband and I would run a half marathon together every year. And after the last half marathon, the first thing that popped in my head was a lyric from a song from one of my favorite artists, Regina Spektor. And it says, "I've got a perfect body, but sometimes I forget. I've got a perfect body because my eyelashes catch my sweat." Yes, they do. They do. I can't sing. And I felt the same thing after I had both of my children. You look down and you see rolls different places and, little tummy. And I think, man, my body is awesome because I just pushed out a kid.
I love that you brought up this relationship between your mom and what she went through. And I think about this a lot. I do think it's very important that I love myself, because how I treat myself and how I love myself translates to what my children see. Because I have a daughter, and I think we all have daughters, but I also have a son. And I noticed when we went on vacation that he is not comfortable taking his shirt off. Like, to go swimming, he will not take his shirt off in the presence of other people. And so it made me realize that body image insecurity is not necessarily limited to our daughters, but our sons may also be dealing with this as well. And so I think of this as a mom. It is my role to do whatever I can as well to make sure that my children are confident in their bodies. And I think that starts with the way I look at my own body and the way I talk about my own body.
Yeah, I think I only have a daughter, but I have 2 nephews, and I think there's just an automatic assumption that boys don't struggle, but they do. And I am sure that those listening that have sons will say both sides, it can really be an issue. And, for me with our daughter, people comment a lot about how skinny and tiny she is. And I've heard her say things like that, repeat it. And I often just caution her against mentioning it at all, or I try to, because it's just not the way I want her to get used to defining herself or talking about herself.
Well, let's talk to another mom who has been on her own journey of confidence and self-love. Andrea is a stand-up comedian and a proud member of Amy Pence-Brown's Facebook group, the Boise Rad Fat Collective. Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Andrea, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where did this journey start? What are the messages you internalized about your body when you were young?
So for me, the first time I remember being body shamed, I was in 3rd grade.
3rd grade?
A little girl in my class, when the class picture came out, said, "You should not have worn that dress." And so it's been weight has been a struggle for most of my life, and I've been considered overweight all my life. My grandparents had me in Jenny Craig in 10th grade. I did another like all liquid based shakes diet and lost 40 pounds, which was a big deal. I was the lightest I ever was, and my grandpa said, "You've got a long ways to go." And at one point, my grandpa even had made an arrangement with me. He asked me to send him in a sealed envelope my weight at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, he was going to give me $1,000 for every pound I lost if I lost over 20. So I was feeling pretty motivated. I got excited about this. I signed up for a team and trained and completed a marathon that year, but I did not lose any significant amount of weight. And by the end of the year, I decided I didn't mail him my follow-up weight, and I just declined the cash. But, you know, he was still very quick to rip open that envelope and then, you know, chew me out about my beginning of the year weight, with no regard for the fact that I completed a marathon, you know, which 99.9% of the world's population has never done such a thing. So that was an ongoing thing, and a continued struggle.
So what about experiences that pushed you in the opposite direction, that pushed you to a place of that self-acceptance and that self-love?
What happened that made me decide to no longer let it be an ongoing struggle was, I have a close friend here that, like, if somebody was to ask me, "Andrea, build the perfect woman in a lab," it would be her. I mean, I feel like her body's perfect. She's got all the things, perfect kids, perfect house, lucrative career, good-looking husband, you know, blah, 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 all the things. And she thinks that she's garbage. And she actually, like, had her body surgically altered at significant cost and with, you know, health risks, and had to have somebody come out and, like, watch her kids while she recovered, and, you know, all these different things. And I just thought, you know, I could go to all of the lengths that it would take to be like her, and I could still not love myself. So I might as well just go ahead and start loving myself now as I am. And yeah, and I made that decision, and I started learning more about body positivity, and, you know, just the really small shifts to mindset, like, I'm lovable, I'm loved, I'm happy, my body's done amazing things. Since then, I visited Belize, and I did one of the most adventurous like type excursions, and the whole time I was worried, like, will my body even it's called the ATM caves. It's worth Googling. And there was some, you know, iffy spots where I was like, is my body literally even going to squeeze through this crevice? But, like, fear about stuff, I don't let fear keep me from trying. So same friend, we had a spontaneous pool party at her house, and I was like, ugh, all the things that I think about before I put my bathing suit on. And I actually sent a group text to her and the other couple, all the husbands, and I said, okay, I won't go so far as to assume we're all feminists, because around here, they're not all where I live. But I do hope we can all agree that women do not get to exist and have fun based upon how much visual pleasure they bring to others. Because I currently have more body fat and body hair than is generally celebrated for women in present-day American culture, but I intend to rock my swimsuit with no reservations. So let freedom ring. I will make no further disclaimers about my appearance. I sent that, and, like, now I know that all that stuff, like, does not even, should completely go without saying, but it doesn't.
Wow. So, Andrea, you talked a lot about being confident, and you're also a stand-up comedian, which means that you, and therefore your body, are on stage all the time. What role do you think that body positivity plays in your stand-up, in your voice?
So I have a lot of jokes about it. I I say that I specialize in mom jokes. Tell a lot of jokes about parenting and shaming fat shamers. So I've got jokes that kind of just point out the absurdity of it all and how fat women's body parts are so often compared to food. Like a big belly on a man, like he's got love handles, but a belly on a woman, muffin top, right? That's weird. And so I turn it around and I'm like, if my body is so disgusting, why do you keep describing it in such delicious terms? So I just kind of like point that stuff out. Yeah, that it plays a role. It's funny, I think about what I'm going to wear on stage. And this one week, it's very hot here in Idaho. So I was like wearing a tank top and I was like, ugh, I can't wear a tank top on stage. And then I was like, nope. Now that I said that, I have to. So I wore a tank top on stage and, it's hard for me. I look back at the video and I still see, an arm that doesn't look like an arm in a magazine. But, so I'm still on that journey. But I'm like, it's okay. And I'm loved. I'm lovable. Even if my arm was 4 times the size, I'm still loved and lovable and worthy.
And it's not stopping you from doing what you want to do. And that's really the most important thing. You're not letting it hold you back from the things that you want to do, even though you're still on the journey.
Yeah.
You don't have to already be at your destination in order to, have that freedom to do what you want to do.
And you're encouraging other women, I think, to love themselves just by getting up there and, making jokes, about it and how ridiculous it is. So, Andrea, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story with us. After this, my interview with Amy Pence-Brown about her activism and her radical stand for self-love. That interview is coming up after the break.
Are you tired of right-wing attacks on education? Head over to redwine.blue and use our action tool to write to your local officials in support of an accurate and honest education about race. With just a few clicks, you can send a letter to both your state representative and your senator. And while you're there, why not sign up for Red Wine and Blue's weekly newsletter, The Cul-de-sac? It has ways to get involved, an advice column for those sticky political situations, and more. Visit redwine.blue to join the party today.
All right, so our guest today is self-described fat feminist mother. She's a body positivity activist, an artist, and a writer. She's given a TED Talk, created performance art, started a body positive boot camp, and more. Amy Pence-Brown, welcome to the Suburban Women Problem.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk to you today. So you say in your TED Talk, we all have a story that can lead to a stand. And here on this podcast, we also really believe in the power of personal stories. Is there a particular story that led to your stand for body positivity?
There are a lot of stories, I guess. Like most of us, I have a lifetime of stories. As a woman, in particular, a young feminist in the making in a large body, growing up in rural conservative America. And at the time, of course, I didn't know that any of these stories were going to lead to something so big and powerful and important. But they were definitely stories that made me who I am, made me a feminist. A couple that stand out in my head: when I was about 16, I cut off all of my long hair into a really short pixie cut, which in like 1991 in rural Idaho was unheard of. My best friend and I did it together secretly. My dad didn't speak to me for days afterwards. The boys in my high school had a lot to say about my sort of defiance of beauty standards. And later I found out that often the cutting of the hair is a very important moment and a radical one for a lot of women in sort of reclaiming their body and their feminism. And in fact, I didn't even know that feminism was a word till I went to college and learned that I and some of the things I believed in and was doing were in fact feminist, and that there was this whole legacy of women and people behind me who had done work to get me there. And famously, I tell another story, fast forward from being 16. Lots of stories happened in between then and when I was 28 and gave birth to my first daughter. And then a few years later, when I was 32, I gave birth to a second daughter. And it was at that time that I talk about this a lot. I Googled the words, "Why am I fat and happy?" because I knew no one else, no other woman in the world at that point in my real life or otherwise that felt that same way and was done with diet culture and done with hating their body and trying to change it.
Wow, that's interesting. So after I had my second girl, there is this culture of bouncing back, right? Losing that baby weight quickly. And I remember having this moment, actually after my first and second, where I didn't care. I was just like, you know what? I'm happy. So I'm just going to be me. And, we'll see where this leads. So it was your public experiment at a Boise farmers market in 2015 that really launched your work into the public eye. Could you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, that definitely did. I had been doing this work for a number of years at that point. I had a small local following and a group that I started on Facebook called the Boise RAD, Fat Collective, RAD short for radical. And it had a group of some like-minded feminists who were done with diet culture and wanted a safe place to sort of share articles and personal stories and that sort of thing. And I had a lot of pushback in the first few years that I was a body image activist. And around 2015, I sensed a shift in the sort of national consciousness towards this newer idea called body positivity that is what we all kind of know now, but is a little bit of a watered down version of fat acceptance, which was its radical mother from the 1960s that I identified with originally. So I had seen this happening, and there was a group out of Australia called the Liberators International, and a woman who's now a friend of mine named Jay West, who did a stand in Piccadilly Circus in London in a black bikini, or actually bra and underwear and markers and a sign standing for sort of radical self-acceptance, and had people write on her body. And I saw a video of it. And I wanted to recreate it in rural conservative America, not London, and in a body that was twice her age. Jay was in her early 20s at the time. I was 40, and twice her size, and see how the experiment might play out differently, or if it would. So I gathered a lot of courage and one friend who's a photographer, and asked her to meet me in the Capital City Public Market, which is our largest farmers market, downtown Boise, Idaho, in the summer. And I wore a black bikini and blindfolded myself, took off my clothes in the middle of the market, and had a chalkboard sign in my feet that said, I'm standing for anyone who's ever struggled with a self-esteem issue like me. If you believe all bodies are valuable, draw a heart on my body. And I had a couple of my daughter's washable markers from her Crayola art kit in my hands, and I was shocked at the humanity and compassion that surrounded me for the near hour that I stood there. Not only did people write hearts on my body, but they went rogue and wrote words as well, and told me and talked to me and told me stories about their bodies and my body, and everybody. And it was captured in some photos and videos, and I cried, and everyone who participated cried. And then it showed up really well in the photos and the video, and I wrote a blog post with it and thought I'll drop it out into my little community who reads my blog, my mommy blog that I'd had for a number of years. But they shared it and shared it and shared it, and in this wild grassroots effort, it ended up going internationally viral.
Wow. What connections do you see between how our society treats women's bodies and how it treats women's voices? Is body positivity a political act?
Oh my gosh, it's definitely a political act, and they are 100% connected. I have said that for a lot of years and made that connection. Sometimes it was less well received and an unpopular opinion. And now it seems to be more acceptable. More people are seeing the connection there. And a long time ago, I wrote this blog post, well, in 2016. So that would have been like 5 years ago, right? This blog post about how you can't be body positive unless you're feminist, and you can't be a feminist unless you're body positive. And I think more people see that now and believe that and agree with that sort of thing. They didn't in 2016, which was what led me to that blog post. And also a lot of people were fairly new to this idea, or were coming around to this idea of feminism. It, as always, since its inception, has this ebbing and flowing of popularity, right? And we had recently gone through at that time a period where feminism was unpopular and was something that like no one wanted to be identified as, and maybe particularly in my conservative rural American world, that they did not want to be called feminists. That feminism was something we didn't need anymore, right? And it was something for like radical women who chained themselves to fences and burned their bras or whatever, and that it wasn't important. And of course they were wrong. Of course they realized that they were wrong. I mean, our voice is inherently part of our body, right? Our body is the vessel that houses the most important parts of us and gets us through each day to do the things that we know, and we love. It houses our heart and our soul and our words and our ideas. And they're inherently connected to me. I do not feel separate from my body, like it's something different than me. It is, in fact, everything that I am, including my voice.
Yeah, and you saw in the previous administration, because I think you mentioned, you wrote this, I think you said in 2016, that was one of the first attacks he would lobby against a woman that he didn't like, was they were fat. Talk about their bodies. And it was kind of his first go-to oftentimes.
Yeah, and it was definitely, I think, the Trump administration that brought feminism back to the forefront, that made a lot of young women and older women identify as feminists, helped them realize that that is in fact what they were, and to proudly use that descriptor. I had proudly been using that descriptor for a long time. I mean, since I first discovered feminism was a thing when I was 18 in college, I had been calling myself that, to the chagrin of a lot of people, including a lot of women.
What feedback have you received from other women on your work, and what kinds of conversations do you have with them?
Mostly, I have a lot of female fans and women fans, and followers, but I do have a lot of fans, and people of all genders, and a lot of male fans. And I will say that my biggest sort of detractors and trolls and haters have been women over the years, and that continues to still be the case. I think there's a number of reasons for that, which are hard and heartbreaking, but also understandable, right? Women, we have been taught that our bodies are one of the most valuable things about us, and what we look like is the most important thing we have to offer the world. Most of us have been taught that our entire lives. So the older you are, the longer you've had that ingrained into you. I think when somebody comes along and tells you that there's a different way and a better way than you might have learned, and come to understand that there is, in fact, it's a game that you have been buying into, and consumer culture and our patriarchal society has taught you these things. It makes you angry. It makes a lot of women angry that I tell them you can, in fact, opt out of the game, and there is no winner. And maybe you've been wasting a lot of your time and money and energy and power on dieting or changing your body or shrinking to be smaller or trying to be something that you're not. So it makes them very angry. And sometimes they project that anger onto me because I've opted out. And sometimes when your eyes are open to something like this, like body positivity or feminism or racism or anything like that, right? You're one of the first things that you feel is anger. And that's sometimes a necessary step in the process of letting go.
Wow, that surprises me to hear that so many of your trolls are women. But then you also mentioned about how we still have a patriarchal society, and we know that in male-dominated environments, the way that women are basically ingrained to feel they get ahead is to position themselves away from other women. And so that is part of what this male-dominated environment kind of cultivates in kind of all the water we're swimming in, that we don't see, that it does pit women against women.
Exactly. And I think that like you mentioned, we have this scarcity mindset, right? Women have been held back for so long, and that, positions of power or jobs or whatever it is, that there aren't enough of. So we're constantly fighting each other, when in fact that's the wrong place to be fighting, right? That it's the patriarchal culture, like you mentioned, that has kept us down, and misogyny is a hard thing to fight.
Amy, a lot of us grew up with distorted views of our bodies, but society is changing. How can we help our kids, especially our daughters, grow up to be confident and empowered?
I talk about this a lot. Body positive parenting is a big topic of conversation for me, and I'm asked to speak about it and write about it. In fact, motherhood made me an activist, and I say that a lot. And I think so I have lots of tips to give, but a few of my favorites, the most important one perhaps, is that it all begins with you, that you are their biggest role model. They are watching everything that you say and you do and you express about your body in an outfit in the mirror in the bathroom in the morning before work. The things that you mention about a celebrity's body or outfit on a TV show, right? They are literally absorbing all of these things and they are seeing them. And so believing that you are worthy and valuable as a human in your body as it is today is so important. And you also can't fake that. That's the other thing that kids can see. So one of my biggest tips is that you have to work on yourself first. It's kind of like that, airplane analogy with the air mask and the face mask, like putting it on yourself first before you put it on your children or anyone else. Another easy tip, I think, is watching more shows or movies or reading books that have diverse characters for children in them, people and women that are doing extraordinary things in different bodies and celebrating those differences. So that diversity is really important and can show up really easily in movies and TV shows and books.
I mean, that's a hard one because that one we don't have control over. So I started watching the show Shrill, and I was watching it kind of thinking, how often is the lead character someone who is a woman who is fat? I appreciate what you're doing, and I know it means a lot to so many women out there. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions. Amy, are you ready?
Yes.
So your work has been tweeted about by a lot of celebrities. What celebrity were you most excited to see tweeting you?
I have to say Kevin Bacon, and lots of young kids don't know Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yeah.
But
6 degrees.
The biggest joke became Kevin Bacon's a fan of my work and he's shared it a couple of times. And the biggest, claim to fame here that a lot of people is that now you are 0 degrees from Kevin Bacon if you know me, right? Because he's directly written to me and shared my work.
What's the best thing about living in Boise, Idaho?
I would have to say the wilderness and the wildlands of the West that we have. Literally out our back door. We have an extraordinary amount of public parks and this whole green belt, which is this beautiful paved walking path along the Boise River. And we have tons of hiking trails in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains that surround us, and desert and lakes. And we're super outdoorsy people here, and my family as well. And that is an extraordinary gift to my children and me.
So you love Brene Brown. I know the women of Red, Wine, and Blue love Brene Brown as well. So what is something Brene has said that has really stuck with you?
So she says a number of extraordinary things, but one of my favorite quotes of hers that I say all the time still. In fact, I said it to my daughter last night my 13-year-old, as she tried out for she's an all-star softball player and pitcher, and she had to try out for a new team, and it was really scary. And it is this: don't shrink. Don't puff up, just stand your sacred ground. And that quote has touched me for a long time. I actually wrote it on my hand before I went on stage to give my TED Talk.
All right, Amy, what's your favorite size inclusive clothing brand or store?
I would have to say the thrift store. So I am an avid thrifter, and I have been for a long time, most of my life. The thrift store is environmentally friendly to me. I'm really a big proponent of reusing and recycling things. And I'm a vintage collector and lover in general. So thrifting and junking is sort of my favorite thing to do. It is a little bit trickier as a plus-sized person, a fat person finding plus-size clothing in any stores. And you have to be really open-minded about fashion and that sort of things. But now there are lots more thrift stores. There are actually some plus size specific consignment stores where you can find lots of plus size clothing. And I like how easy it is on the wallet and on the earth.
Oh man, the whole time you were talking about that, I was singing that Macklemore's thrift store song. I don't know if you're a Macklemore fan. And I'm like, yes, oh, yeah. Yes. And he's like, popping tags. All right. What movie do you watch to cheer yourself up after a bad day?
I would have to say there are a couple, but one I always go to since it came out in 2001 is this little sweet French film called Amélie.
Mine is probably anything Julia Roberts. I don't know why. I've been a Julia Roberts fan since I was like a kid.
That's also great.
I like some of the old ones too, like Mystic Pizza. And
I love Mystic Pizza. In fact, I'm on this mission with my teenage daughter. We're watching 80 of my favorite 1980s and 90s rom-coms from when I was a teenager. I'm making her watch them before she graduates. And Mystic Pizza. There's a lot of Julia Roberts on there.
Yeah.
And Mystic Pizza is one of her favorites and mine.
Oh, so good. I've watched it many times. All right. As you can imagine, we love wine here at Red, Wine, and Blue, but I read that beer is actually your drink of choice, and that's okay. We won't judge. So what's your favorite beer?
I do love beer, and I'm so not a beer snob. And so honestly, my favorite beer is Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR, a cold can of PBR any day. I will always choose it.
Oh, I love that. I love wine, but I'm also not a wine snob. So if you're like, what kind do you like? My answer is yes. I just, whatever is fine. I like it. All right. That's it for our rapid fire questions. Thanks for joining me today. So where can people find you and your work online?
I love social media. I use it a lot, and I have for a number of years as sort of a radical tool in the revolution. I find it powerful and empowering to have all this media at our hands. So you can find me on Instagram at Amy Pence-Brown, or the handle is Idaho Amy. On Facebook at Amy Pence-Brown, writer, artist, body image activist. The Boise Rad Fat Collective I mentioned is also on Facebook. We have members from all over the world. And my website, of course, has lots and lots of things and writing and images and photos and artwork, and my blog and more at amypencebrown.com.
Thank you, Amy. Your Instagram is awesome. I feel like your cheeky, cute photos are exactly what the Red, Wine, and Blue ladies will love. It was great talking to you today. Thank you again for being here on the Suburban Women Problem.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, everyone. Amanda, thanks for that interview with Amy Pence-Brown. I think we can all learn something from someone who has really taken a stand to advocate for self-love.
I love talking to Amy. So today I know you can't see me in Podland, but I decided today I was going to go no makeup, not do my hair. So I ran some errands this morning, and I'm like, look, I'm going to channel my inner Amy Pence-Brown, and I'm not going to do my hair and makeup for you, everyone, today. So that brings us to our toast to joy. So we like to end every podcast with a toast to joy. So my toast to joy is to playing in the rain. So I took my two littlest to the pool with me last night, met up with some other moms and some kids, and we got caught in this sudden huge downpour. And it was so sudden and so fierce. We didn't have any time to take cover at first, so we all got instantly soaked. And it happened so fast, we just couldn't help but laugh. So you have all these moms are just sitting here laughing at how soaked we all are. Our stuff is soaked. And the kids see us laughing, and they're like, oh, this is fun. So you see the kids start to play in the rain, and they're jumping and dancing, and it was just so much fun. So my toast to joy is playing in the rain.
That's a very happy toast to joy, and I'm sure your kids will remember that for a long time.
And where it could have brought us down, where we could have said, oh man, we wanted to go to the pool and now it's raining, but instead it's this cute little memory and we turned it into something, great. So Rachel, what's your toast to joy?
Well, I recently read Keep Sharp by Dr. Sanjay Gupta about brain health. And I have to say that by about 2 or 3 o'clock every day, I feel like I'm drowning from this book process that we're going through with my husband. It's a really steep learning curve, but I'm learning to embrace it and think of how my brain is just getting so much healthier because I'm doing new things and I'm learning new things and I am stretching myself every day. So that drowning feeling of feeling overwhelmed is actually good because it means that I'm really making an effort to do new things. And there is a lot to learn about publishing and promotion and personalities. I don't have another P for more alliteration, but you get the idea. It's a lot.
I have to remember that. Next time I feel like I am drowning, this is okay. My brain is staying sharp, figuring out how not to drown right now.
It's true.
That's actually scientific. It's actually a scientific thing. I actually teach this to my students when it comes to study skills. And it's called desirable difficulty, where it's actually like if you make studying a little harder, things like reading things a little bit out of focus, or there's even a font that's out there that's like a study font that's a little difficult to read. And apparently if you study that way, your brain actually retains the information more. So it's a real thing.
Jasmine, what's your toast to joy?
So my toast to joy is actually getting a chance, which this is really rare for me. So I know a lot of times on the podcast, we're talking about books that y'all have read, and I can say that I'm a little jealous that you all have the time to really just sit down and enjoy a good book. But last week we went on a family vacation, and while we were on the vacation, we went to the mall, and there was a bookstore in the mall. And so I decided to buy a book, just a recommendation from a friend, a book that she read, and she said it was really good. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go and I'll buy this book, fiction, because there's enough nonfiction happening in my life that I really don't necessarily want to read about it. So I grabbed this book, and I got so engulfed in the book that I read it in 2 days.
Nothing better.
I really just took the time to just sit and read. And my kids were on this vacation with me, and they were just watching me. And my son, who is an avid reader, he loves reading. He's like, wow, Mom, that book must be really good. You look so into it. What's it about? And I think it's really important because I want my kids to want to read. And so I think it was good for them to see me not only reading, but so into what I was reading that even they were like, I don't know what's in there, but it must be good because it has really got your attention.
Well, now I want to know. What's the book?
So the book was called The Vanishing Half, and it's a really interesting story. It's got a lot about race and colorism, but it's fiction and it's great. Britt Bennett is the author. Great book. Like I said, I could not put the book down because the way it's written, it's when you get to the next chapter, it's but wait, what's going to happen next? I need to know. So I really enjoyed that book. So yes, that's my toast to joy.
Oh, love the book recommendation. Well, thanks so much to everyone for joining us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a rating and review. We'll see you again next week on another episode of The Suburban Women Problem.
The Suburban Women Problem was created by Red Wine and Blue. Our executive producer is Beverly Batt. Our producer and editor is Amy Thorstensen, and our video producer is Ashley Hufford. If you're ready to be part of the Suburban Women Problem, head over to redwine.blue and sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.